We now have confirmation that David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister in 2016, made a dirty deal with the trade unions so that they could support his Remain cause to stop Brexit, a deal that has resulted in all the chaos we are seeing with the strikes today. Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. We now have found out what actually happened in 2016. Why was it that David Cameron got all the world leaders and the IMF and the trade unions, everybody to unite, the whole of the establishment, to try to stop the will of the people, yet still technically failed, obviously, because we won the Brexit referendum, but they continued their betrayal by trying to stop Brexit, by trying to force us to agree to a deal that ties us to EU rules. Now David Cameron has been exposed because during the EU referendum in 2016, he went around, of course, he got your Ed Balzers, the Tony Blairs and Alistair Campbells and Barack Obamas, but he also managed to get two of the massive union groups, the Unite the Union as well as Unison, to agree to be the faces of the Remain campaign, thinking that they represent the working classes. Yeah, the union barons in the 21st century representing the working classes. Oh, so rich coming from these idiots. Basically, Francis O'Grady, who was one of the heads, united with the so-called conservative Ruth Davidson, and of course the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. Oh dear God, these guys created a coalition. And the only way that David Cameron could get them to agree was to give them more powers, even more powers than before. Now, in the 1980s, a lot of people on the left would say, well, Margaret Thatcher destroyed the unions. In reality, I mean, there were some issues as well, but overall, she made them more democratic so that more members of the unions could actually have a say over their leadership as well as over decisions to go on strike. Now, all that progress went out of the window because since then they abandoned the reforms, the union reforms, and David Cameron just said, it's okay, I think stopping Brexit is more important than holding workers to ransom and of course the taxpayers, and things are kicking off now. Now we've had a number of people, including Greg Smith, the Tory MP, who's come out to say that militant unions are holding the country to ransom this Christmas at a time when traders need the support, at a time the economy is fragile and patients need to access treatment. When of course we're still having a lockdown with the NHS, backlog with the NHS that remains long. Now, on the one hand, everybody can sympathize with the public sector workers who are they're finding it difficult with the cost of living crisis. Now the problem is that you idiots at the top of the establishment, you wanted socialism for decades and decades. When you nationalize everything, when you bring everything in the name of public sector, then eventually at times the country runs out of money. Now we all want everybody to get a pay rise. Of course, that's just normal, especially with inflation happening. But when you make everything to be paid by the government, which is the taxpayer, you can't all the time decide to actually give pay rises when you have so many government workers. It's not easy to do. You need to decentralize, you need to denationalize. You cannot continue taking taxpayers' money, and we don't really have anything left anymore anyway. And then you wonder, well, who do we blame? Should we blame the taxpayers? Should we blame the patients who get ill? Should we blame politicians? Well, it's the fault of the system. You created the system. Now you have to take responsibility. Now we're going to have a situation where at Christmas, ambulance workers are not going to work. Paramedics are not going to work. And people are going to die in the streets. See what you've done? You created a massive sacred cow in the NHS. No one can reform it. No one can touch it. Otherwise, ooh, that will be treasonous. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back in half an hour. I'm Tousi and we are the media.